the phenomenal force of nature, Mr. Charles Reese. Hi, Charles. Are you on the line?
I'm on the line, and I'm wired and live.
I know you are, honey. I know you are. As always, when I met Mr. Charles Reese in Washington, D.C., when he was doing his performance salon, James Baldwin, A Soul on Fire, it was, instant recognition. I had never met him before, and he was definitely channeling the spirit of my uncle, the late James Baldwin. And since then, we've continued a dialogue, and, I really love what he's doing and how he's helping to keep, along with many other people, in his own way, the spirit of my uncle, and also in a wonderful way documenting a very historic event that many people don't know about, which is my uncle's meeting with the then Attorney General, Robert Kennedy, along with Lena Horne, Jerome Smith, a former freedom rider, Lorraine Hansberry, and I believe, was Harry part of that too?
No, daylight come and we won't go home. Yes, Harry was the meeting.
Yes. So just to give you a little brief bio, for those of you who are listening, I'm sure Charles, as I was telling Michelle, is a marketing maven. Anybody who's in the arts, who has a film, needs to take his workshop on how to promote oneself, because I took his workshop, and it was very helpful to me, how as an independent artist to, get grants, to get monies, and to just get your name out there and keep the buzz going. So about Mr. Charles Reese. Charles Reese is a native of Washington, D.C., and a graduate of Morehouse College, and now resides in Los Angeles. He is a professional working performance artist. I like that, working.
Yeah.
All right? Educator and consultant in television, independent film, micro web series, and theater. Reese is currently in a series regular on the hit comedy web series. Is it Who or WHO?
Who?
Oh, WHO, and that's available at www.ajakwetv.com. That's ajakwetv.com. He is best known in the theater community for his critically acclaimed off-Broadway performance in the title role of James Baldwin, A Soul on Fire. David DeWitt of the New York Times declares, A Soul on Fire is funny, thrilling, and wise, buoyed by the passionate performance of Charles Reese in the lead role. So we're going to end there. You have a lot more credentials, and we'll go into that. But we want to thank you for gracing us with your presence all the way. You're in Pacific Standard Time, right, Charles?
Yes, I am. We have the sun's still out. We're still shining, and I'm quietly sitting in a nice room where I can just talk to you. Well, first of all, let me thank both of you all, Michelle and Aisha, for the invitation. And I'm so excited. And I'm glad you start the bio there. One doesn't always want to hear all one's accolades. I'm just a working artist who's been humbled to be given a piece of work that I thought was just starting off just going to be a play, because I, as an actor, just wanted to do something. And it turned into a journey of what I call an unprecedented life journey that I didn't know I had started until this time. And meeting you was a part of that journey, and meeting your wonderful aunt. So I just want to give gratitude and appreciation first and foremost.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Well, I'm always talking about divine providence, and how, people come together and people meet and, formulate relationships and share in community. And that's what happened. I met you, and then we met again at my book signing in Baltimore at Station North Arts, and then we walked right up the block and
had a party.
Aunt Paula, right?
On the front stoop.
On the front stoop, carrying on, drinking wine and talking about Uncle Jimmy and looking at all the pictures and the wonderful art at my aunt's studio in Baltimore. And And so it is, as you always say.
That's my saying, and I have to admit that, and so it is, comes from Reverend Michael from Agape. So I've actually borrowed that into my world.
I love him. I absolutely love
I always have to get credit for where that really comes from.
Okay, from Agape. Yeah, he's amazing. Well, just keep I associated with you now, so I'm always saying, as Charles Reese says, and so it is.
Well, the whole thing, we borrow what we need to get us through. I mean, I think that's the wonderful joy about this whole James Baldwin project. And just want to jump in and say, what is so amazing is that we are, as we're talking now, we're in the 50th anniversary of James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. 50 years ago, he wrote the book, The Fire Next Time, which I find so amazing because The Fire Next Time really got the attention of the Kennedys in 1963. And so my playwright and I, Howard Simon, who's gone now, wrote this piece, James Baldwin's Soul on Fire, to talk about the Baldwin-Kennedy meeting. So it's so amazing that this current play that we reimagine touches on Jimmy's piece, The Fire Next Time, because we're all celebrating 50 years of that book and this Baldwin-Kennedy meeting, which I'll be happy to talk more about.
Yes, absolutely. And so many people, Charles, do not know about that crucial meeting, which then led to the Kennedys taking an active role in seeing to it that certain protections were put forth for people. Jerome Smith, one of my beloved adopted uncles, who was an original freedom rider, had to get up in Kennedy's face and almost have a physical altercation to explain to him how badly he had been beaten as a freedom rider and nearly within an inch of his life, and the Kennedys were in a bubble. They did not realize the type of brutality that our people were facing in the South at that time. So this meeting, it's another thing, like talking about the brown babies and how a lot of people don't know about that, and this is a piece of our history that is crucial. It's very important that it be told. So should this story. It's very, very important, but a lot of people don't know about it.
Yeah. So the way, and that's the whole thing about archiving history. That's why I must say, I have to jump in and say, I just love Dora's story. I actually listened to that whole thing before I was on, and I was sitting here just blown away that here it is, a story about Germany and brown babies, and here we are in America talking about the Baldwin-Kennedy meeting that a lot of people don't know about. The wonderful thing about the Baldwin-Kennedy meeting, you and I had this discussion in D.C. when I was able to talk to you more about James Baldwin actually gave his life to this country. And we talked about that. But what was so important about that particular meeting at that time was there were artists who were there that represented allegedly all the Negroes, so to speak, because that's what we're called then. I always tell that story about how, I went from Negro to being black, to being African-American, to being Afro-American, and we'll talk about that later. But the significance of this meeting is that the Kennedys had one thing that they wanted to do, and Baldwin and his group, along with Harry, Lena, Dr. Kenneth Clark was also there. I have to really make note of that because he was a social psychologist that did that Brown versus Board of Education study for dolls. But what they wanted in that meeting specifically from the Baldwin side was they wanted the president, or the attorney general, I should say, to get his brother the president. And that's a very important note right there, that you had two brothers that had the highest power in this country. You had one as the attorney general and one as the president. So here you had the attorney general talking to these folk, and what Baldwin and the folk wanted to do was to get the Kennedys to understand that civil rights was a moral issue and not a political issue.
Right.
And they also wanted to get the attorney general, Robert Kennedy, to get his brother, John Kennedy. I like saying that together because they had two different names. But to get his brother to escort a black child to a school in the South. Because what they believed that if the president escorted this child, and if anyone spat on that child, they would also be spitting on the nation, and everybody would see it. Wow. And I think those were the two major components that they were pushing through. And you said it very clearly, having Jerome Smith there. I think a lot of people don't understand what these whole freedom riders were doing. They were young. They knew that something was wrong strong in the country, and they gave up their lives. Jerome Smith was beat down to a pulp just for simply trying to, one, sit at a counter, or trying to register people to vote. They had put their lives on the line. Mm-hmm. So when this meeting happened, and this meeting happened 3 months before the March on Washington, there was a lot of activity going on in 63. But this meeting did exactly what you said. Even though the Kennedys didn't understand Jerome, it was people like Lorraine Hansberry, who I call the fiery person in that meeting, who had to get up and defend Jerome and say, this is the most important man in this meeting. If you can't understand this voice, how in the world are you going to understand any other voices that you're trying to get these civil rights things done for? So it was a very, 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 very intense type of meeting. And I think that you can now go online and see different, you don't see a recording of the meeting per se, but there is a conversation that Baldwin had with Dr. Kenneth Clark. And, back then, you get into the room, you smoke your cigarettes, and you have a conversation, but you talk about a lot of other things, and then he finally talks about the meeting. And in the play version that we do, we actually use a little bit of that footage. But that's kind of sort of just a little quick version of the meeting, what it realized, what was happening during that time, and what it symbolized. What we do with the play, though, is that we kind of sort of infuse that in from Jimmy's point of view, and we also kind of like give you a little intake of what we believe, what was going on in his personal mind, in his personal life at the particular time. And it's only a two-character play, and it has one person playing all those other people. We simply call him Ethereal, who guides Baldwin through this piece to get him to the meeting. And got a little high drama in there, but at the end of the day, we were able to use statistics and information that we got from James Baldwin, a biography, which was done by David Leeming. By the way, David Leeming was very helpful for us because he was Baldwin's biographer and a former secretary, and so we actually found the information, you ready for this, inside of his book. I had not heard of the meeting, nor had the playwright, until we discovered it. We said, ooh, that's a wonderful way to kind of sort of write a play around it. So we use that type of historical information to kind of sort of tell the story.
So it's a reimagining a fictional account of an actual historical event that took place.
You know what? If you write that down, I'm going to push that line.
That was very good.
Well, what is it?
Well, I am a Baldwin, so I got away with words.
That is exactly what it is. And that lets people know, is it a biography? What is it? No, it's a reimagined historical fiction. Because, one, we weren't inside the meeting. And no one videotaped the meeting itself, so we have to use what we can. But I tell you one of the things that we discovered, and I say we, I'm talking about the playwright Howard Simon, who's no longer with us, so it's been my job to kind of sort of be a legacy bearer for a playwright who wrote about an iconic figure, and at the same time, we actually bring the iconic figure back into the forefront. And like you said, yes, there are other people out there doing Baldwin's work, and I acknowledge them, Calvin Levels, and a number of other people. You have the academicians doing a lot of different things. But this is what I call a performance, literary, kind of sort of spoken word piece that can fit. If you can't do the play, then we will do it for you in a coffee salon. We'll do excerpts from you. We will go to libraries, and that's what the salon has been able to do. Keep
Right.
Charles, this is Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
We've met before as well, haven't we?
We have. You know what, Michelle? Go way back into
I thought. I just feel like I've known you for a long time, and
Cheryl Ellison and the film salons is. I used to be on the side. That entrepreneurial spirit. We were doing those, and I remember. I think we featured you at some point in time.
I knew you, and I think I know who this face belongs to. That's wonderful. World. But Charles, I just think the work you're doing is so important, and I'd like if you would speak a little bit to, how does our art, what is the responsibility of our artists, and how does art convey some of these important, not only historical aspects of our culture and our history, but our culture itself. It's like how do we, is our art utilized to its fullest advantage as a representation of our culture and as a tool to relate to, especially young people, some of these historical, very important historical happenings that they probably wouldn't know about otherwise.
Well, you know what? That first of all, that is actually a great question. I won't jump and say I'm going to jump to the international side. Internationally, I was in Paris a couple of years ago at a web festival. We find that internationally more people know or are using our culture more than we do on the other side. That's just what I find a lot. And from that, and that's not a bad thing, but sometimes I think Edward Albee said this in the Zoo Story. Sometimes we have to go a long way outside of our distance in order for us to come back home. Mm-hmm. And I think that we're finding back at home, wherever your home might be. That's what I always tell people. Wherever you call your home, you find that culture now, things are changing so much. Who controls the purse strings, decide where the culture is going to go, who decides, what's good, what's bad about culture. All cultures have good and bad.
Right.
But who's putting out those particular stories?
Right.
As it relates to history and our historical events, it is important that we as artists find at least one or two good things that we can work on. I found mine in Baldwin. So that a story can be told. And once that story has been told, you're going to find out so many other stories are being told and can continue to be told either through theater. We have the web world now. We're not locked into the fact that it has to be this, it has to be that. But our culture is so important because it kind of sort of tells us where our traditions are.
Right.
And traditionally, people of color, have always been what we call griots. We're storytellers. And our information has not always been written down on the paper. That whole thing is if you want to really get something, you don't want people to find out what's going on, put it down on paper and see if they'll go read it. But our historical stories were told by storytellers, the griots, and it was passed down. I think sometime, for me as an artist, I think I met James Baldwin just one time. And I told Aisha this many times, and it's also in the book version of this play. I got to kind of sort of do an afterwards to tell what the story was all about for me and living in it. I met James Baldwin once when I was a freshman at Morehouse College, and I was terrified because I didn't know any better. He looked at me, I looked at him. He said, "You got eyes like me," and then I ran. You're 17, you're 18. What do?
Right.
You run. You go back to your room. You talk to your roommate. Say, "I think I saw James Baldwin." He says, "Yes, you probably did see him because he's around here on campus." Because at that time, James Baldwin was working on a story for Playboy magazine about the Wayne Williams case.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And my mother was terrified. She did not want me to go to Atlanta because she thought I was going to come back in a box or a bag. And we were on a curfew at that time. So when I saw James, my thing was to just go run. I was trying to get back to my room. But that one meeting, I don't know what happened. I say it now. That one meeting apparently did something to me. I remembered it. I went and did more study. I read some more Baldwin. By 1985, I found myself catching a plane. Talk about how culture will hit you. It hit you into a griot.
Right.
We all get our culture where we get it. It hit me through that little moment. And I recognize that now as a seasoned man. And I'm still growing. I use the word seasoned. But I think, going back to really to answer your question, I tell how I met him so that our culture is instilled through us from birth. And then we learn as much as we can. It is unfortunate, and I say that word unfortunate, that there's been about a big gapping of information in our culture of stories. So that's why you have stories like Doris' story about brown babies. And I love the fact that what she's saying, which I think is good to answer this question for you, we're going to have to tap into what can I do to tell a story, not what someone else is doing. And what you might be able to do, it might not have anything to do with money and other things. Now, don't get me wrong. We do need to be compensated for the work that we do. And that's one thing that I constantly work on. I told Aisha about that, how we try to find things to make this path go. Because civil rights, we talked about this a lot. The civil rights movement was not free.
Right. Right.
That's when Harry came in. That's when Sidney Poitier came in. They were all money pockets. And so whatever this information about whatever that's what I love about Harry Belafonte. That brother is still in this race. You may not like it or what he says, but he is in it to win it all day long. So
all day
young
long.
folk of all ages, and I say young folk, people under my age, we need to begin to look at our elders in a different way. They fought something. Some of our freedoms that we have, we take for granted.
Yes.
If there was not a Harry Belafonte, if there was not a Lena Horne, if there was not a Dorothy Dandridge, if there was not a Marcus Garvey, if there was not a Bayard Rustin.
Right.
Okay? Because I'll lay it to you. If some of those people did not come through to do just that small thing, or that, what I say, extraordinary thing,
that's right.
They were regular people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes our culture so rich. And that's why I call these things what I do salons, and I'll give you my definition of a salon. What do we do when we grow up? We go to the barber shop, it's a salon. We go to the beauty salon. And in those places, specifically in the African-American community, the black community, or the Negro community, if we're in 63, we got our information from those. Even the church was a salon. These are places where information passed through. We didn't have the Internet. That was our Internet.
Right.
And in some cases, it's still the Internet for a lot of people, depending on
it sure is.
Where you are.
Funny.
You know, and then during the whole, during the whole Harlem Renaissance movement as well, salons with Amelia Walker were a whole different things. They were rent parties. They were in gatherings where people shared their artwork, but it was a way for them to take care of each other. So just to top off the question for you, yes, it is, as an artist, it is our kind of sort of our duty and our right, but everybody has their own calling for it, and they'll get it when they get it. We'll do our individual things, and where we come together collectively, like having this conversation today, inviting a brother to talk about it, somebody's going to hear something.
Right.
They may not remember it right now, but they'll get it later.
Right, absolutely, when they're supposed to. Absolutely.
Well, Charles, we're thrilled that you have chosen James Baldwin as one of your muses, because I think that Aisha's uncle was someone who, if he were alive today, I think he would be a force to be reckoned with that we really could use. I mean, I think that there are so many things that James would be very upset about and have so much to say that could really move people. But even his writings, they're so relevant.
They're so relevant.
Yeah.
People don't read him like they should. They don't know him like they should. And I think his words are still so relevant today that we really need to lift his spirit up and his work.
Yeah. Well, that's my job. That's my job.
And yes, but you know what?
You have.
I'm going to be making sure that happens with till my last breath. That his work is given the platform that it deserves, because it didn't. And part of it has to do. He spent a lot of time out of the country, but it just. It just has had its sleeping period, but it definitely is going to, his books are going to be in every store. His name is going to be known the way it should be, the way it used to be back in the 60s and the 70s, what got him a cover on Time magazine. I mean, people recognized his voice and what he had to say, that it was prolific, that it was prophetic, that it was integral to the movement, and to the history and moral complex country.
Yeah.
He was it, and he still is it. And it's our job. I would say it's not just mine, but it's as a legacy bearer, it definitely is many those of us who feel that they have been touched by that fiery spirit and by what it is that he represented, to do it in our own way, And I very much, I'm going to say this on the air, I just heard that Bayard Rustin, they're doing an event on the 22nd in Washington, D.C., the Washington Council of the Arts, to honor Bayard Rustin and my uncle. They're having
what? That
Yes.
conversation happened in February when I was there.
Wow,
and
exactly.
And that brother was there when I did that salon, and they were talking about that. Now,
Right.
ironically enough, I just got a call from a D.C. commission to call me ASAP, and I don't know what that's about. So that's so funny that you would say
Probably about that, Charles.
Wow.
Probably because I got contacted and told about the event, and they're honoring Bayard, and they're honoring my uncle in one event on the 22nd. For those who are in D.C., I'm sure once all the events that are happening for the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, for that entire week, which is next week, it's upon us. Definitely, look it up, check it out. I don't have the particular details of the event.
I'm going to read. You know what? It just came in my box today. So
okay, good. You can read it on the air.
Can I share this? Because you said you hit a spot for me about his words, and I just wanted to share this quick little thing that I always like to share straight from the fire next time, if you will allow me to.
Please do.
Okay, and for everyone, it's on page 105, and this is what James Baldwin said in 1963. He said, "And here we are at the center of the arc, trapped in the gaudiest, most valuable, and most improbable water wheel the world has ever seen. Everything now, we must assume, is in our hands. We have no right to assume otherwise. If we, and now I mean the relatively conscious whites and the relatively conscious blacks, who must, like lovers, insist on or create the consciousness of the others, do not falter in our duty now, we may be able, handful that we are, to end the racial nightmare and achieve our country and change the history of the world. If we do not now dare everything, the fulfillment of that prophecy recreated from the Bible in a song by a slave is upon us. God gave Noah the rainbow sign. No more water, the fire next time.
All right now. Thank you, Charles, for blessing us with those words. Chills.
Absolutely.
Just running through my body every time I hear those words.
It's so relevant. I mean, still so relevant. I was just speaking with someone about, what is the answer to this racial profiling issue that our young black men are going through, and after the Trayvon verdict. I said it could only be the coming together of the progressive white people,
right? Exactly.
With black people.
Exactly.
And what did he just say in that passage? Y'all know I'm jumping up and down about right now.
It is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah, and I don't know what's going to move the progressive whites, because during that time there was obviously there was obviously a strong need for young whites to get involved. Yeah. They joined the freedom rides. They risked their lives. They were beaten right next to us. During that time, they exhibited a courage and a bravery that was, to me, unusual. And these were middle-class whites, often college-educated, who marched along with us, who sat in with us, and who rode with us. The absence of the voice of the progressive white person or the liberal or now is like I'm not hearing anything. I'm not hearing enough.
Well, and I think that, but Aisha, I think you hit it on the head earlier, and it is you had voices like Baldwin who was out there doing it. They would hear. I mean, remember, the Fire Next Time, I always tell people, is one, it's a two-parter. One,
right.
And I think the first part speaks to the whole stop and frisk thing. It was a letter to his nephew about how he had to be and do in this country.
That's
exactly.
Right. Yes.
And so that was to a 15-year-old in 1963. And in these salons that I do now, and I've grown a little bit, Aisha, I have incorporated now where I actually will sit and read. After I do what I do about my book, I have now thought it was important that passages of Jimmy had to be heard.
Right.
And so if you'll go to prattlibrary.org, you can actually listen to online. We did a podcast when I was in that library that people can go listen to the podcast where I actually, what I just read to you, but I explained to people, if you read the first part of The Fire Next Time, read them to your 15-year-olds now.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, and when you read it,
No one is
speaking. It will almost feel like it is today. So it takes about 50 years for things to happen. Now, listen, we haven't had the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, and now we have that 50th anniversary is not until 2015, and we've already, with less than 50 years, we've now had something struck down, a piece of it. See, a piece of something being struck down, that's the beginning of it.
Exactly.
You know, I remember once looking at the King papers before Morehouse College got them back, and there was a letter that Martin Luther King wrote to Nixon, who was a senator at the time. This is before Nixon ran for president. And he told Richard Nixon in this letter going, we didn't get everything that we wanted, but for the Voting Rights Act, but you, Mr. Nixon, will benefit from it when blacks are able to vote.
Absolutely.
So now we have this little provision whereby this provision didn't say all of the states should have gone in that provision. It only mentioned a few states that had real problems with getting people to vote.
Right.
And so now here we are, less than 50 years later. We can't get Congress to vote on this, that, and the other. Now we've got to deal with this 50 years later. And like you said, where is that voice? Well, Harry's voice is still out there, but where are our artists today? And I don't put it all on what the artists are doing. I know as an artist, for me, I can only do what I can do, so I don't try to, like, say this, that, and the other. But artists were, I should say, they were the key and the answer. To a lot of different things. Now, of course, artistry has changed. We get our money in different ways, but I also believe that social media is one of the defining attributes to what I call the next wave of what we want to call a movement.
Yes, absolutely.
We've seen it in Israel. We've seen it all over, you know.
Right, in Egypt, everything, how people communicate, get the word out, gain support. It's just phenomenal, the power of social media. And, you know, we have to recognize the new tools.
Yeah.
But I think it's also a matter of, you know, our young people who are using these new tools still need to have the reference points.
Yeah, exactly.
We have our intern sitting in with us here in studio, taking notes and tweeting for us, and she will then go and research. Alexandra will research what we're talking about today, and then she will tweet about it or she'll write about it. But everybody, all of our young people don't do that.
Right.
But if she hears it strikes her interest and if she doesn't know about, she's going to take that next step.
Right.
And that's what a lot of our young people aren't doing.
Right.
Well, you know, we have to do too, and you know, we have to remind people, you know, we all were young at some point. And sometimes we go, well, what were we thinking about then? But the young folk today have so many distractions. And that's what I call them, you know. And I have my own distractions today, period, as I now. But when I say distractions in the sense that a friend of mine was telling me the other day, he was sitting at a coffee shop, and there was a family sitting together at a table. You know how hard is it to get a family to sit together, three of them? But guess what they were doing? They were all texting sitting at the table.
Exactly. Nobody was talking to
Nobody's
each other.
looking at each other.
And so we were like, what can they do?
You can't do. That's a no-no in my book, right, Charles? No texting at the dining table.
That's right.
Please.
Etiquette.
Yeah, and just getting to your book. That's why, you know, I highlight. I still highlight. I have my highlight pages in your book because when we did a book salon back in Baltimore, we went to dinner with some folk, and we say, okay, let's follow these rules and regulations.
Oh, no, they're not rules and regulations, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, you know, when I call them rules and regulations, but I hear you. But
no, but you do it
guidelines
if you want to appear. If you want to appear in the know, that's all.
Yes. You know, but the whole thing about someone like a James Baldwin. Remember, a lot of people realize that when young folk go Google Baldwin, or like you said, Michelle, when they go Google that information, I love that sometimes other things come up that will get their interest. Like for now, I have a Wikipedia page that says James Baldwin, A Soul on Fire. The play itself, the playbook now, is a Wikipedia page, and I had to go on the page to read it to make sure everything was up to par.
Right.
Because I didn't do the Wikipedia page, so I went through it, and ironically, you know what happened? Somebody read the book and put that up.
Wow. That's amazing.
Wikipedia, so I tell people, and so now Wikipedia page has become like my one pager.
Right.
So people want to just go to Wikipedia because I've checked everything, and whoever put it together, they did a great job because they quoted me from the book.
Right. Wow.
Right.
So that's that new social media.
Right, exactly.
And how do we keep our young folk engaged? I had a 13-year-old person at a salon in Baltimore who came up to me at the end and said, you know what I want you to do? I just want you to read to me some more. I just haven't had anyone to read to me.
Oh, wow.
So you know when we sent him, Aisha, we let him know that your aunt that lived here, and he was so excited. We're hoping that will happen. His aunt said he will take him to the house so that he can actually go meet her. He had never heard about Baldwin, and he just wanted someone to read to him some more.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's amazing. What a great story, Charles. That's a fantastic story.
It is. Well, then the point I was making, Charles, and this is something that maybe you and I can work on together, but I don't know what the process is, but Bayard Rustin is posthumously, this was my first question, and then it got answered for me. The universe answered it. You know, I've very much been wanting to find out the nomination process for someone to be nominated for the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Okay.
And whether or not it could be done posthumously, and that was one of the things on my list to do, you know, for in terms of being a legacy bearer. And then I heard that Bayard Rustin will be given the Presidential Medal of Freedom. So that was the answer to my question. Wow. And so I have to find out how that process is so that I can get James Baldwin nominated.
Well, you know what? You got publicly, I say yes. That's not a hard yes for me. You know, when I say yes, I will start digging.
Out the process, and I find it very interesting that they're honoring them together in an event in Washington, D.C. So for the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, for those of you who don't know, Bayard Rustin was one of the architects. He is not a well-known figure. His face is not that recognizable in our community because he, along with the woman who helped organize the March on Washington, her name is, both of them work together. It'll come to me in a minute, but Bayard was instrumental in that.
He was a major facilitator.
The whole process. You know, organize the march from a strategic, that people didn't just come together and get on the bus now. That was strategic.
No. I think that he does. I will let everybody know, Bayard also, there is a documentary that you can go to.
Brother Outsider, yes.
I think that helps a whole lot. And we understand, too, one of the reasons why they tried to dismiss him because he was an openly gay man.
Right, exactly.
Where it could be very dangerous. And I always tell people, let's not always knock that. Let's tell that story that is true.
Absolutely.
Let's get through that. But there's the movie version that I like that Jeffrey Wright did for HBO. There was a wonderful person that played Bayard, and you got to see a little bit of Bayard in that actual movie and what he kind of sort of did. So that one's kind of sort of another one. But I think you're right, and I'm hoping that when I get off this phone and I go get that call, I'm hoping that I'm actually going to be right there on the 22nd. I'll just make my schedule available, but I'm hoping that you just, because I think it's important, and I think that where you are when you get to that movie, you're going to find out how they actually did that. But I think that answers will be right there for you because I think that, of course, James Baldwin should. But I do want to also mention, too, that the book, The Fire Next Time, is one of the top 50 books through the Library of Congress.
Right.
That is actually on the list, and do notate that as a change agent for the country.
Right,
so
absolutely.
I just wanted to notate that.
Yes,
but Bayard Rustin, I have always adored him. And there's also a play out about Bayard. I think that what might end up being interesting, they were trying to do a movie on Bayard. I think they got somewhat of a green light, but it's still in the makings. And, of course, recently I had this other push, too, that I'm going to ask you about, is that it is time for Jimmy's film. It can either be, it's just time.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I wrote an article about it in the LAPost.org recently. I kind of sort of did a charge, and I said, you know what? I can step aside and facilitate. I just need to see it get done. So I put a call out to Don Cheadle and Chewy Echeford to come forward, because once I can find That's the money base. I think those are two actors too.
It would be
perfect.
No, absolutely.
So
I'm
if you want to look at that actual article, you can actually go to LosAngelesPost.org. O-R-G. It's under entertainment, and we're trying to get people to pass that around. So, Aisha, we got two things that we'll be working on. We'll start igniting the fire for that, and we'll get the fire ignited for that medal, because remember, France has already done theirs. He had the Legion Award. He had the highest award that you can get out of France. So it is only, honorable that he should have it for America.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that is a mission and a plan, and we'll work on that. And so what's new for you? What's coming up down the pike besides? Tell us a little bit about the web series.
Michelle, you'll love this one. My web show, WHO, has been adapted into a TV show, which is now called Basketball Wife. Not Wives, Wife. It's actually listed on IMDb, and we shot the pilot. And now we're shopping, and we did like about 6 other episodes to go with it. And Michael Ajakwe, that's the gentleman's name, who actually he actually produced this. He directed it. He found the money to do the whole pilot. We went and used a SAG-AFTRA new media contract. So we actually got paid a few dollars for this one, and now we're waiting for the buy. That's all you can do. You put yourself out there. So that's what happened to that particular show, and I'm very excited about that. So it's just a waiting process. That's a part of the game. So while that's happening, I am actually now getting ready to start booking different salons. I've taken the salon now and turned it into a salon lecture series. So now I can go to colleges as a lecturer and use the excerpts from the book. Anybody wants to do a play, we go, hey, you can do the play. You just have to have, we wanted to produce it. I'm not a one-night person for a play. This play requires me to kind of sort of go into myself. I can do the excerpts and pull Jim, because something happens when you get to this point. So we're doing salons now as lectures. I'll be announcing some things on Facebook about where some of the pieces are, and I'll also be calling you about a few other things if you want to join me. We're just looking at all these other options of how you can continue art. And that's when I'm most happy, when I'm passionate about. When I'm doing Jimmy, when I'm doing my web show, I'm passionate about that. And then I have my, daily other life of art and culture. But I found those passionate things that you get to go back to, those are the things that usually will sustain you.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
well, I can't. I'm going to go look for WHO very soon. And
you'll find. You know what? Here's the deal. You'll find a few. If you go on YouTube, you'll find a few things. If you under my name, I did a little kind of sort of a reel. They pulled down, just so you know, they pulled down the web page because they didn't want, and this happens all the time, so you don't have to compare what you saw there, why they're selling and buy. But you can go on to IMDb and look up Basketball Wife and see some of the people. There's some amazing people. Judy Pace is coming back, if y'all remember her from the 70s. She plays the mother-in-law. You have Dorian Wilson. From the Parkers and Dream On. You got Tommy Ford. There are guest appearances by Denise Williams, Karen White. So we got a slew of new, old people mixed together, because that's what it takes to get this kind of done. So kudos off to Michael Jagway. I just got very fortunate. I did a web show with him 4 years ago, and so we're moving from web to TV. So that's what can happen with the web world. All of you young folk out there is that you can begin to develop and create things. And this is a comedy, by the way. And we haven't had this is traditionally all black cast, pretty much, and we haven't had one to come back on. So Michael believes that we're in a prime way to kind of sort of get some more things done. And it's enough room for everybody. I'm going to put that out. There's enough room for Oprah. It's enough room for Spike. It's enough room for all of us to have some work out there so that we can prosper, and we can also get these things that we need to get done. If we want to get Jimmy's thing done, we need to be able to say, hey, let's go get this done collectively and individually. So.
Absolutely, and to show that there is a market and an audience for this work.
Yes.
It's I don't know why it seems that we can only have the Tyler Perry kind of comedy, You know, it's like there are other, you know, people who have a different set of what, you know, have a different sense of what humor is, who want something different. And
you know, there was a time, and we are not a monolithic group of people. I mean, I think that sometimes you do. But then I always tell people, Hollywood, and you'll see in the article I wrote, it's about the business of show, but we can show that we have the business too, because guess who are the biggest consumers?
Yes, exactly.
So, but we need to and I think this is where young people can help us out a lot, and that's what I really like about young people. They're very savvy with this, all the computer things. They can teach you things on how to move things around. I think, Aisha, we were talking about, that's why I beginning to do workshops when I'm in town and talking to people about we need to come together collectively and see what piece of work do we want to produce on collectively. It is no joke that Spike Lee, I know there's a lot of big hoopla about it, about him being on Kickstarter and going to find his money. Basically what he's saying is that, you know what, your money, you can't buy your way into this and that and the other. You might have this, you might think I have this and that and the other, but when it comes to film producing, TV producing, listen, even producing radio shows, that's what I liked about Doris. She talked about, listen, got to get the people groomed. On all sides of the fence. When I was, the whole thing about the web world, do you know that there are about 4 or 5 international web festivals that only focus in on web stuff created for web television?
I learned that when I took your workshop, Charles. I had no idea.
I tell people, I let people use their phone, let them go ahead and Google. So you have to write everything down, you know. Google, you know, because, you know, Michelle, you be on the board, you're trying to write this and that. Pull your phone out. Go to this site, that site, now look at this. That. I mean, that's the way I had to, you know, because I'm moving through. But there is the first web festival. It's called the LA Web Festival, and Michael Jagway started that because we didn't have any place to show our web show after we got it up.
Right.
And so then the French came along after that with the Marseille Web Festival, and I got to go to Marseille because of that. The French come and get their content from the LA Web Festival. Now Hong Kong has a web festival. Now so does Melbourne, and here comes Vancouver and Toronto.
Right. Wow.
So and here's what I want to let y'all know. The reason I'm bringing that up, and I think the other thing I like to do, Aisha, is to give out information that I have so my brain can receive some more. So that's what I always work on.
If you do that,
so
you're like
make
Doris.
some room.
You share a wealth of information with people to help them see their dreams become realized, or to help them along their path. You know, that does return blessings back to you when you operate in the world like that.
Thank you. We try. That's my mom and me. God rest her soul. But these web festivals, what's so fascinating, I'll say this and get out, is that the formats that you can use, you can actually take your radio show and go and make it into a web show. They're doing horror stuff. They're doing lifestyle things. They're also beginning to do documentaries. Now, these things run from comedies of 5 minutes, 10 minutes for drama, and they're using those particular formats and doing those. That's why they're called web shows, because they're short, they're quick, they can be continual, and this and that and the other. Rolanda Watts is doing a great job by, you know, having her show, but all these things can be utilized through the web world. So I just had to just say that out loud, going, go for it, people. It's out there. Just like television. When television started, there was no money. Money soon comes.
Right. I love it. That's right. Money soon comes. Yep. Build it and they will come. You know, you just have to just go ahead and do it. And then the interest comes and everybody comes sniffing around and wanting to put money into things and supporting it. Well, my. And
as we suspected, a ball of energy.
Right, exactly. And wonderful. We love your passion and your fire and your dedication. And one of the things I appreciated so much about, you know, because I came to the show with skeptical eyes. I was like, who's this man doing some salon on my uncle, and what's he talking about? And, and I was blown away by the historical information, the educating you were doing, the enlightening you were doing. You know, my uncle was still at the center of it, and making sure that you were keeping his legacy alive, educating people about that meeting that took place. I walked away with so much information, And so you were doing an incredible job, and that's, why I loved it and why I support it, because it was clear that you were passionate about making sure that that voice was lifted and that the information was shared with people, and people walk away never having heard anything about that meeting, that perspective, having been, and to hear the words of the Fire Next Time read aloud and performed is incredible. Charles, I'm going to ask you to do something a little strange. But when you open up the salon, you sing a gospel, a spiritual. And I want you to
you remember everything. I can't put a thing past you. Yeah.
Sure can. Because that's what, when I said, okay, he got the gospel in there, because up on gospel music, my uncle was a lover of gospel music, my mother, all of us, and
Yeah, all throughout the piece. And it's a traditional song that we all kind of sort of know, but the way it really works for me is that it's a way to get people into the space, because I know.
And it works.
Get people into the space. And simply we just say, I said, brother, I know the road is long, and oh, sister, keep your eye on the prize. Keep your eye on the prize. Hold on, hold on. Paul and Silas was bound for jail. I had no money for the go there bill. Keep your eye on the prize. Hold on. And that's how we start the whole introduction of getting you into a salon.
Exactly. Well, this has been the incredible Mr. Charles Reese, again, a force of nature, and just a wonderful, wonderful person who's doing incredible work on keeping the legacy of my uncle, the late James Baldwin, alive through performance, his performance salon, James Baldwin, A Soul on Fire. We'd love to bring you up and have you do a full.
We'll have to do that.
Yes,
very soon.
Full